The night in the rain. The rain was heavy that night, falling like silver threads through the cold air. Commander Raylan pulled the hood of his coat tighter as he walked through the ruins, his boots splashing in muddy puddles. The streets were dark, broken, and silent except for the sound of rain hitting metal and stone. Once, this had been a busy city, but now it was only a skeleton of what it used to be. Street lamps leaned at strange angles, glass shattered across the ground, and walls were marked with old burn scars. Raylan had seen many war zones, but there was something different about this place, something that felt hunted. He was just passing through, heading toward the outer districts where the relief convoy was waiting. But then, in the corner of his eye, he saw movement. He turned slowly, scanning the shadows between two collapsed buildings. At first, he thought it was a stray animal, but then he saw a small, pale face peeking out from the rubble. A girl, maybe 12 years old, her dark hair plastered to her forehead from the rain. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear. Raylan took a slow step forward. "It's all right," he said in a calm voice. "I'm not here to hurt you." The girl didn't answer. Instead, three more small faces appeared behind her, younger girls all shivering in the cold. They were dressed in torn clothes, their feet bare and muddy. Raylan's chest tightened. These children had no business being here, not in this place, not in this weather. He stepped closer, reaching into his coat. The eldest girl flinched, ready to run, but he only pulled out a small emergency ration pack and a silver thermal blanket. He knelt down, holding them out. "Take it," he said softly. For a moment, none of them moved. Then the youngest, maybe 5 years old, stepped forward and touched the pack with trembling hands. Raylan smiled gently and set the food and blanket, but on a dry piece of stone. Slowly the girls came closer, their eyes never leaving him. That's when he heard it. The faint hum of machinery in the distance. It was a sound he knew all too well. Recon drones. His instincts sharpened. He looked up, scanning the sky between the ruined rooftops. Sure enough, a faint blue light was moving through the mist, growing brighter. "Get inside now," Raylan whispered urgently. The girls froze, unsure. He didn't wait. He grabbed the eldest by the arm, guiding her toward the hollowed-out building behind them. The others followed, their bare feet silent against the wet ground. They ducked inside just as the drone's light swept across the street. From the shadows, Raylan peered out. The drone floated silently, its black surface glistening with rain. A red sensor eye glowed, scanning the ruins. The eldest girl leaned toward Raylan and whispered, "They're hunting us." Her voice was soft but filled with terror. Raylan wanted to ask who they were, but now wasn't the time. The drone's red eye moved in their direction. He pulled the girls deeper into the shadows until the cold, wet wall was against their backs. The drone paused outside, hovering as if it could sense them. Raylan's hand went to the old sidearm under his coat. If it came closer, he would have to shoot. The rain seemed louder now, each drop hitting the metal roof above like a ticking clock. Seconds felt like minutes. Then, without warning, the drone drifted away, the hum fading into the night. Raylan let out a slow breath. He looked at the girls. They were still pressed against the wall, their faces pale and wet from the rain. The youngest clutched something in her small hand, a crystal that glowed faintly blue. Raylan frowned. "That isn't from Earth, is it?" he asked quietly. The eldest girl didn't answer, only stared at him with guarded eyes. He could see now there was more to this than a group of lost orphans. They were hiding from something far bigger, and that crystal might be the reason. A sudden sound made him stiffen, footsteps, slow and heavy, coming from somewhere beyond the broken wall. Not the light steps of a person, but the steady metallic thud of something mechanical. The eldest girl's eyes widened. "They found us," she whispered. Raylan signaled them to stay quiet. He drew his weapon, his heart pounding as the sound came closer. Through a gap in the wall, he saw a shadow. Tall, humanoid, but with jagged edges and glowing joints. It stopped, turning its head as if listening. The rain kept falling, masking their breaths. Raylan tightened his grip on the gun. If this thing stepped inside, there would be no hiding. The figure's red eyes flashed in the dark, scanning. Raylan's muscles tensed, ready for a fight. Then, in a slow, deliberate motion, the machine turned away and walked into the mist. Its footsteps faded until there was only the rain again. Raylan exhaled quietly. He looked at the girls, knowing this was only the beginning. Something was chasing them, something powerful and relentless, and for reasons he didn't yet understand, he had just made himself part of it, escape through the wastes. The night didn't get quieter, it got heavier. The rain turned to a thin mist that clung to the skin, making every breath feel colder. Raylan led the four girls through the back of the ruined building, his boots crunching on wet glass. Behind them, somewhere in the shadows, the slow hum of drones returned. Not just one now. Several, their faint blue lights drifting like ghost lanterns through the fog. The eldest girl kept glancing over her shoulder, her grip on the smallest one so tight her knuckles turned white. Raylan's mind was racing. He had moved through war zones before, but never while protecting children. Every noise but the falling stone, a creak of rusted metal, felt like a signal to their hunters. They crossed a collapsed overpass, Mauve Sauce, Ishuma. In between skeleton-like beams of twisted steel, below them, the black water of the flood channels reflected the dim light of the moon. Raylan spotted movement in the reflection, a faint shimmer like heat waves. He froze, raising his hand for the girls to stop. The shimmer moved along the water, keeping pace with them. Invisible, but definitely there. "What is it?" he whispered. The eldest girl shook her head, her eyes wide. "It's a watcher," she said, her voice trembling. "Don't let it see your eyes." Before Raylan could ask what that meant, the shimmer vanished. A cold wind swept through the steel beams, carrying a faint metallic scent. They hurried on. The streets ahead were broken into long stretches of cracked stone and patches of dead grass. In the distance, Raylan saw the burnt remains of human vehicles, trucks, transport shuttles, all destroyed in the same way. The metal was warped outward like something had exploded inside them without leaving scorch marks. It wasn't human tech. The youngest girl stumbled, falling to her knees. Raylan turned to help her up and saw what had caused it. The crystal in her hand was glowing brighter now, pulsing with slow, steady light. Raylan felt the hair on his arms rise. "Why is it doing that?" he asked. No one answered. Instead, the eldest pulled the smallest girl close, hiding the crystal under her coat. But it was too late. A distant metallic scream cut through the night. It was not the sound of an engine, nor an animal. It was the sound of something calling out to its own kind. Raylan's instincts screamed at him to move. He led them off the road, through a narrow alley choked with rusted pipes and old cables. Drops of water fell from above like a slow, steady clock. As they moved deeper, the sound of running water grew louder. They emerged onto an old storm drain that stretched into the darkness. The air here was as thick and damp, every sound seemed to echo. Halfway through, the blue light returned, not from the front, but behind. Raylan spun around, weapon ready. Two drones floated at the entrance, their red sensor eyes sweeping the tunnel walls. They began to move forward. Raylan fired once, the shot cracking like thunder in the enclosed space. The first drone sparked, spinning before crashing into the water. The second veered upward, its scanner locking onto them. Raylan grabbed the eldest girl's arm and ran. The tunnel walls blurred as they sprinted through the darkness, the sound of the drone's rotors closing in. Up ahead, faint daylight shone through a broken grate. Raylan climbed first, pulling the girls up one by one. They emerged into open air again. But this was worse. They were standing at the edge of the wastes, a wide expanse of flat, cracked ground stretching for miles. In the distance, sharp black spires rose from the earth like the bones of some ancient giant. The wind here carried a strange hum, like low music that never stopped. The eldest girl pointed at the far horizon. "That way," she said, her voice urgent. Before the watchers reached the spires, Raylan didn't know what that meant, but the look in her eyes told him one thing. If the watchers reached those spires first, they would never make it out alive. Somewhere behind them, the metallic scream came again. Only this time, it was closer. The promise. The wind across the wastes was sharp, carrying dust that stung the skin like tiny blades. Raylan kept the girls moving, scanning the horizon for any sign of shelter. Behind them, the metallic screams rose and fell like hunting calls, each one closer than the last. The ground beneath their feet vibrated faintly, as if something deep below was waking. At last, Raylan spotted an old service tower leaning at an angle, half buried in the cracked earth. Its metal surface was covered in strange burn-me. Arcs, long and curved like claws, had raked across it. They slipped inside through a bent hatch, the air smelling of rust and ozone. Inside, the tower was hollow and dark except for a faint green glow from broken panels along the walls. Raylan set the girls down on an old storage platform and began checking his ammo. He had 3 charges left in his pistol, not enough for a fight against whatever was chasing them. He looked at the eldest girl. "You need to tell me what's going on," he said. Her face was calm, but her hands trembled as she pulled the crystal from her coat. Its glow filled the room with cold light. "This," she whispered, "is why they hunt us." Raylan studied it. The crystal was not cut or shaped like human work. It seemed grown, alive in some way, its light pulsing with a rhythm almost like a heartbeat. "What is it?" he asked. The girl's eyes shifted to the others before she answered. "It's a gate seed," she said. "It can open paths between stars to run, but only for those who are chosen to carry it." Raylan frowned. "And you 4, you're the chosen ones?" The eldest nodded slowly. "We are the last," she said. "The others were taken or killed." A loud crack echoed from outside. The sound of something heavy stepping onto the tower's shell. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The youngest girl whimpered, but the eldest held her close. Raylan raised his weapon, moving toward the hatch. Through the narrow gap, he saw it. A watcher, taller than a man, its body built of smooth black armor and glowing red lines. Its head turned slowly, scanning the dark with its crimson eyes. When it moved, the air seemed to ripple around it like heat on a desert road. Raylan stepped back into the shadows. The eldest girl touched his arm. "If you survive this night," she whispered, "we will find you again." Raylan almost laughed at the strangeness of the promise, but her voice, she had a weight to it, a certainty that didn't belong to a child. "Why would you come back?" he asked quietly. Her answer was simple. "Because you are the guardian." The floor shook violently, the sound of tearing metal filling the air. The watcher had found an opening, its blade-like limbs slicing through the wall. Raylan fired once, hitting its shoulder, but the blast only slowed it. The eldest girl grabbed the crystal, its glow flaring so bright that the whole room turned white. The watcher staggered back, emitting a high-pitched shriek. In that moment, the walls behind the girls shimmered, and a doorway of light appeared. Through it, Raylan could see a tunnel that seemed to stretch into the stars. The eldest turned to him. "This is where we leave," she said. "You cannot follow. Not yet." Before he could stop them, the girls stepped into the light. One by one, they vanished, the glow swallowing them. The eldest was the last to go, pausing only to look back at Raylan with a steady gaze. "Remember the promise," she said. Then she was gone. The doorway collapsed into nothing, leaving only darkness and the distant sound of the watchers retreating. Raylan stood alone in the ruined tower, rain beginning to fall through the broken ceiling. The crystal's light was gone, but its memory burned in his mind, and deep down he knew they would come back, and when they did, the world would never be the same. 12 years later. 12 years had passed since the night in the rain. The memory had faded in color, but never in weight. Commander Raylan, now older, lived quietly on the far edge of human space. His farm was small, his days slow, the sky above stretching wider than any city. War felt far away here, almost like a dream. But on that night, the dream broke. It began as a low vibration in the ground, a hum that rattled the tools in his workshop. The animals in the pens grew restless, their ears twitching at a sound only they could feel. Raylan stepped outside, the air sharp and still. Above the rolling hills, the stars were dissipate, airing one by one, swallowed by a vast shadow. At first he thought it was a cloud, but clouds didn't move like this. The shape grew larger, darker, until it blotted out the moonlight. Then the light returned. Not from the moon, but from the ship. It descended slowly, wrapped in flowing lines of silver and gold that pulsed like living veins. It was not a human design. The hull was smooth and curved, like it had been grown, not built. The air crackled with static, and every hair on Raylan's arm stood up. The colony gathered at the edge of the landing field, whispers moving like ripples through the crowd. Some people were afraid, stepping back into the shadows. Others stared in awe, unable to look away. The ship's engines were silent now, yet it hovered as if weight meant nothing to it. Glowing symbols drifted along its surface, rearranging themselves in patterns no one could read. Raylan didn't move. His chest felt tight. Something in him knew. This was not a random arrival. This was for him. With a deep, resonant hum, the ship's lower hull unfolded like petals of a giant metal flower. A ramp extended to the ground, smooth and seamless. Mist poured from within, curling around the edges like breath on a cold morning. 4 armored figures stepped out, their movements precise and powerful. Their armor shone with the same silver-gold light as the ship. Helmets concealed their faces, but their presence filled the air with a weight Raylan could feel in his bones. The figures stopped at the base of the ramp. For a moment, no one moved. Then the tallest reached up and touched the side of her helmet. It dissolved away in a ripple of light. Beneath it was a face Raylan knew. Older now, sharper, but impossible to mistake. The eldest girl from 12 years ago. One by one, the others removed their helmets. 4 faces, 4 pairs of eyes that held memories of rain, fear, and a night long past. They smiled. Not the smile of strangers, but of those who had kept a promise. The eldest stepped forward, her voice carrying across the field. "Guardian," she said, "we have returned." Raylan felt the crowd shift behind him, their whispers rising, but all he could see were the 4 children he once sheltered, now standing before him as warriors from the stars. The eldest lifted her hand, and a small object floated between them. A crystal, glowing brighter than it ever had before, the same crystal he had seen that night. She closed her hand around it and spoke, her voice steady. "We come with a warning," she said. "The Watchers are moving again, and this time they will not stop at the wastes." Raylan didn't need to ask what that meant. The way her voice cut through the air told him everything. The war he thought he had left behind was coming, and this time it would not be fought only on Earth. Reunion and revelation. The crowd around the landing field kept its distance. No one dared to get closer to the Starship. Its strange light painted every face in silver. Even the night air felt heavier, like the weight of another world had settled here. Raylan stood still. The 4 warriors stood before him, their eyes locked on his. In those eyes, he saw something he had never seen before. Not fear, not relief, but purpose. It was as if every step they had taken in the last 12 years had led them to this moment. The eldest walked forward and placed the glowing crystal into his hand. It was warm, humming with a rhythm like a heartbeat. "The gate seed is alive," she said. "It woke the day we crossed into human space." Raylan closed his hand around it, the hum traveling up his arm. He remembered the rain, the fear, the promise they made. Now the promise was here, standing in front of him. "Where have you been?" he asked quietly. Her gaze didn't leave his. "We were taken by the astral guardians," she said, "not as prisoners, as chosen." Raylan frowned. "Chosen for what?" She stepped aside and the others came closer. One of them, the second eldest, removed a small sphere from her belt. With a flick of her wrist, the sphere opened, projecting a vast image into the air above the field. Gasps moved through the crowd. It was a star map, but not any human map. The stars were arranged in patterns Raylan had never seen. Between them ran glowing threads, connecting points across impossible distances. "This is the astral network," she explained. "A web of gates older than any empire, built by those who came before us all." The threads began to fade one by one, until only a handful remained. A shadow spread across the map, swallowing the light like ink in water. "This is what the Watchers have taken," the eldest said, her voice sharp. "They devour gates, systems, worlds, fed until nothing remains." Raylan stared at the projection. He remembered the Watcher he had seen in the rain. Even alone, it had been dangerous. Now he imagined them in numbers, crossing stars. "How far until they reach us?" he asked. The eldest looked at the shrinking map. "They already have," she said. The sphere shifted again, showing an image of a massive structure drifting in the black of space. It was like a nest made of dark metal and spines. Thousands of red lights glowed inside it. "Their forge," the youngest spoke for the first time, her voice soft but clear. "They are building faster than ever." Raylan's jaw tightened. "You came back to warn me," he said. "But why me?" The eldest took a step closer. "Because the astral guardians have no answer for the Watchers," she said. "They fight, they fall, and still the enemy grows." She looked at the crystal in his hand. "But humans, Humans think differently. Her words carried something between respect and challenge. You are the guardian, and the gate seed will only answer to you. Raylan felt the weight of the crystal. It seemed impossible that something so small could hold the key to anything. But deep down, he knew the truth. The moment he had met these girls, his life had been pulled into something far larger than himself. The eldest extended her hand. Come aboard, she said. We have much to show you, and little time. The hum of the starship grew louder. Somewhere above, the clouds began to twist, as if sensing the power below. Raylan looked once at the quiet colony, the people watching with wide, uncertain eyes. Then he looked back at the girls. No, the warriors, and the ship that had crossed the stars. He stepped forward, the crystal still glowing in his hand. The enemy returns. The starship's ramp pulled Raylan into a world of light and shadow. Inside, the air felt alive, humming with energy that prickled against his skin. The walls weren't just metal. They pulsed faintly, as if the ship itself was breathing. The girls led him to a wide command deck where a single window stretched across the front like a sheet of black glass. From here, he could see the entire colony below. Small lights from homes flickered like fireflies. For a moment, there was peace. Then the peace shattered. A red flare cut through the clouds. It wasn't lightning. It was a weapon. The blast struck the colony's outer fields, erupting in a silent wave of fire that bent the air itself. Raylan gripped the railing. From the shadows beyond the hills, shapes began to rise. At first, they looked like spires of black stone. Then they moved. Dozens of watchers stepped forward, their bodies taller than any human machine. Their limbs were sharp, jointed in ways that defied human design. Behind them, dark ships hovered low, each one carrying swarms of smaller drones. The air turned cold. The girls didn't panic. They moved. The eldest snapped her hand toward the window, and the starship responded instantly. Panels shifted, weapons unfolded like wings of light. A deep voice filled the deck. Not from a speaker, but from the ship itself. Threat level Omega, it said. Raylan didn't know what that meant, but the tone told him it was bad. The eldest glanced at him. You wanted to know why we came back. You're about to see. Outside, the watchers advanced. Their eyes burned red, beams of scanning light cutting across the colony. One beam stopped, locking onto the starship. The air vibrated. Raylan realized they weren't just scanning. They were aiming. The ship fired first. Blinding arcs of light tore through the sky, slicing enemy ships in half before they could react. But the watchers didn't fall back. They accelerated, moving with a speed that didn't seem possible for something so large. The first reached the edge of the field and leapt, its blades catching the light before it slammed into the invisible shield around the ship. The impact shook the deck, sparks scattered across the glass. Shields will not hold for long, the ship's voice warned. The second eldest shouted commands in a language Raylan didn't know. A panel beside him lit up, showing a rotating model of the battlefield. More enemy ships were dropping from orbit, far more than the ones they could see. Raylan's instincts kicked in. He moved to a nearby weapons console. The youngest looked at him in surprise. You can't operate astral tech, she said. Raylan's hand tightened around the crystal still in his pocket. Maybe not, he said, but this can. The moment he placed the crystal on the console, the ship's lights surged. The holographic map changed, showing not just enemies but glowing paths in the air. Targets. The ship's voice returned deeper now, almost respectful. Guardian recognized, it said. Weapons unlocked. Raylan grabbed the controls. The ship's cannons roared to life, sending lances of light through the enemy ranks. Watchers fell, their bodies breaking apart into shards of black metal. But for everyone destroyed, two more emerged from the shadows. The eldest shouted over the noise. This is only a vanguard. The real fleet is coming. Above them, the clouds split apart, and through the gap, Raylan saw it. A massive, dark shape blotting out the stars. It wasn't just a ship. It was the forge he had seen in the projection, and it was descending, guardian of two worlds. The deck lights dimmed as the forge's core burned brighter. It was like a second sun had opened in the sky. The heat from it was not natural. It pressed down like invisible hands. The girls worked their stations without fear, their voices steady in the alien tongue. Raylan moved to the center console, the crystal burning warm in his pocket. Planetfall weapon will fire in 30 seconds, the ship's voice warned. Raylan's eyes swept the battlefield map, the colony below, the watchers closing in, the forge above. He knew in that moment there was no time for a slow fight. If the forge fired, the colony would be erased, not just buildings, every life, every face. He thought of the night in the rain, of the girls huddled in the dark, and the choice he had made to protect them. This was the same choice, only now the lives at stake numbered in thousands. He pulled the crystal from his pocket. Its glow surged, filling the deck with blue-white light. The ship's voice deepened. Guardian command mode unlocked, it said. New symbols filled the air above the console. Paths, patterns, and points of power. The eldest turned to him. The seed can open a gate, she said. But only you can choose where. Raylan understood without needing more words. They didn't need to destroy the forge here. They needed to move it. Get me the coordinates, he said. The second eldest's hands danced over her controls, projecting a spinning image of deep space. A black region pulsed at its center. The maw, she said. A gravity well strong enough to crush a star. And the forge. Raylan set the crystal into the console. The ship's hum became a roar. Outside, the watchers froze mid-charge, their red eyes flickering as if they sensed the shift. The forge's weapon core faltered, its light dimming. A ring of blue energy formed beneath the enemy fleet, widening until it covered the entire forge. From the ground, it looked like a hole in the sky. The watchers reacted. They broke formation, some leaping toward the colony, others launching directly at the Starship. Raylan didn't hesitate. Fire all batteries, he commanded. The ship answered with light and thunder, cutting down the closest attackers. But one watcher made it through, slamming into the deck. Metal screamed as its blades tore through the hull. Raylan drew his sidearm, firing into its core as the eldest drove her spear through its head. It collapsed into black dust at their feet. The gate's pull grew stronger. Ships, drones, and finally the forge itself began to rise against their will. The sky turned into a swirl of blue and black as the gravity well took hold. The forge's spines twisted violently, firing beams in all directions. One struck the colony's outer field, throwing fire into the air. Raylan's chest clenched. They were out of time. He slammed his hand on the final command rune. The gate flared, swallowing the forge in a single burst of light. The watchers that remained on the ground collapsed into dust, their link to the forge severed. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of fires below. The ship steadied. The eldest looked at Raylan with a rare smile. "It is done," she said. But Raylan shook his head. "No, this was only one forge," he replied. "The war isn't over." She stepped closer. "Then fight it with us," she said. Her voice was not a request, but an invitation. Raylan looked down at the colony, at the people now looking up at the ship with awe and hope. He remembered the rain, the 4 children in the rubble, the promise they had made. Now they were warriors. And he was more than just a protector, he was a guardian. Of 2 worlds. The Starship's engines flared. The colony shrank beneath them as the ship rose into the sky. Ahead, the stars stretched wide and endless. Raylan tightened his grip on the crystal. Whatever was coming next, he would be ready.